sorry to tell you, I've died. Now, I'm a ghost. Only kidding, guys. But today, as you might have guessed by this random as anything intro, I will be talking about one of my favourite subjects, something I've talked about before, something I've touched on before, and it is the paranormal. Whoa, and the world of ghosts. It's something I've always been interested in as far back as I can remember. And today I know it's not a big thing for everyone and not everyone likes it as a subject matter, but I just wanted to sort of clarify, as it were, what it is I love about the paranormal, why I got into it in the first place, and also where I stand on the subject. So let's just get into this. So as I said in the intro, I'm really into the paranormal. I always have been. It's something I have loved for almost as far back as I can remember. I thought today it would just be interesting to sort of talk about the paranormal as a subject and where my love for it kind of comes from. The paranormal means quite a lot to me, World of Ghosts, and it's a big part of why I love Halloween, because it has a spiritual sort of connection for me. For me, I always have felt like the paranormal has been sort of wrongly put to the back of the world, and it should be something that we as a society are more interested in and are trying to find answers for. Many years ago, I used to watch a program which I'm going to mention in a moment, but I'll go into it in a minute, where there was a spiritual medium. Now, I'm not sure about mediums, if I'm entirely honest with you, but he said something that was so true about the paranormal. And I think it definitely means something now. But it's kind of the reason why the paranormal, I think, gets put in the category of weirdos that it does. And he said, quite simply, for the skeptic, no proof is ever possible. But for the believer, no proof is ever necessary. And it is because of those two very different poles apart ends of the spectrum that I think the paranormal has always been classed as this kooky, crazy, stupid thing that maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it wrongly has been. On one hand, you have the scientifically minded and skeptically minded people, which it's good to be, by the way, but are so close-minded, like literally that the idea of the paranormal, it just can't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not even a thing we're going to look into, because it'd be like sending a scientist into the Amazon to find a golden unicorn. You know, it's not there. You're not going to find it. Why would we study or spend time looking into something when we know it doesn't exist? There's no such thing as the paranormal. There's no evidence for it. The thing about the skeptics and science in general is that that's true. No proof is ever possible for a skeptic or a scientifically minded person, because I could go to the Tower of London, set up 1 billion different cameras in 1 billion different formats, you know, night vision, heat vision, whatever. I could have it, you know, them filming 24/7, capturing every little thing that happened. I could capture Anne Boleyn doing a jig on the spot where she had her head chopped off, and, you know, and it still wouldn't be enough evidence for science, because as far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist. The problem is, so that's one problem why the paranormal, nothing ever gets resolved, no one ever has any answers over it. The other problem is, though, is the other end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum, in my opinion, though it is only my opinion, is completely and utterly dominated by kooks. Very well-meaning people who are also trying to find answers, but they do it through a sort of a made-up way. Like, oh, I found a red feather in my garden, an angel visited, and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you believe that kind of stuff, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend you. But it is that kind of thing, and the fact that for some reason, it's been sort of claimed by the religious world, the paranormal, that doesn't give it a very good scientific look. It kind of does make it look like something only crazy people enjoy or are into or go looking for. For me though, I've always thought that when it comes to the paranormal, there needs to be more of a middle ground. There needs to be some kind of a scientifically minded but still open-minded enough collaboration to look into the paranormal, to at least accept, even on no other premise than this, that something peculiar is at play, that something otherworldly is at play. It don't have to be dead people necessarily. It doesn't have to be, you know, your grandma who died 16 years ago come back to make sure you were making a cookie recipe correctly. It don't have to be that. It could just be some force in nature that plays around with us a bit that we have yet to understand. I don't know. But I think until there is this collaboration between science and the less kooky side of the paranormal fraternity, we're never ever going to get answers. I mean, you could argue we'll never get answers anyway, because if you believe that it's something to do with an afterlife, you're never going to have an answer until you're dead. My thinking is that maybe there's a possibility that there's more than just afterlife stuff going on here, and maybe it's something more we should be looking into, just for general knowledge more than anything. But that's just my little opinion on the paranormal. So now I've sort of put my cards down where I stand on the paranormal, that I love the paranormal, I'm interested in the paranormal, and I think more needs to be done to really get some proper answers. I thought I'd go over where my kind of love from the paranormal stems from. And the weird part is it comes from TV. It comes from strange, bizarre cartoons I watched as a kid and films, and then things I watched as a teenager. So when I was a kid, one of the biggest influences was actually Ghostbusters. Me and my brother were obsessed with Ghostbusters, absolutely obsessed. We grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was a big thing. Everyone loved Ghostbusters, and there were 2 really successful films by the time I was about 5, and then there was a cartoon series, The Real Ghostbusters, and we had everything. We had the Ghostbusters station, we had the Ecto-1, we had the characters, we had the ghosts, we had the Marshmallow Man, we had the backpacks, we had the guns, we had the traps, the ghost traps. We had everything, and I was obsessed with that film, and which is weird because I was a bit of a scaredy cat kid, and there are tiny little frightening elements in Ghostbusters. So you'd think I wouldn't like that when I was like 5, but no, I really enjoyed it, really got into it. And it's a weird thing to say, but I think that my love of Ghostbusters and the films and the cartoon series kind of just sparked this general interest in ghosts and what they were and what were ghosts. What are these things that we're seeing, that people see and hear and interact with us occasionally? As I grew up, my interest only grew. By the time I was 16, a TV programme started in the UK that would just completely change the whole playing field of the paranormal. At least for me and for many, I think. And that programme was a programme called Most Haunted. Now, if you're from the UK and you've been alive for the past 20 years, you've probably heard of Most Haunted. You may have even heard it anywhere else that you might be living. But Most Haunted was kind of like the grandfather of all the ghost shows, the myriad of ghost shows that are now you're able to watch, whether it be Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Asylum, Ghost this, Ghost that, My Grandma's a Ghost, whatever it might be. All the different programs that there are tailored to the paranormal nowadays. Most Haunted was like the granddaddy. It was the original. Because up until then, you see, even though what they did is now to a penny, everyone's doing it. Back then, no one had done that. It was a completely new concept. Paranormal programming, paranormal discussions were always things about like somebody telling their story. It'd be a program where they went to interview a guy, and the guy would be like, yes, and I looked up the stairs and there was an old woman there and she went shh at me and I went to the toilet. And that was that was it. There'd be a guy telling a story, a bit of a weird reenactment, and then that would be it. And it was interesting watching, especially if you were into the paranormal, but it wasn't nothing was being solved. There were no answers being given. It was just some guy telling his story. But then in 2001, when I was about 16, Most Haunted appeared on the scene. It was a completely different concept. It was completely new. Because what they did was go to a supposed haunted location, film the supposed haunted location, and try to capture some paranormal activity on film with night vision cameras and other bits of equipment. They'd take a medium along to see whether he could kind of sort of confirm anything for them.
What is it, Derek? You alright?
Mary loves Dick. Mary loves Dick.
But it was like in the middle. It was like half of it was a bit spiritualist and half of it was a bit scientifically minded.
You want to me?
Oh. And they were trying their hardest to capture something paranormal on film, to answer the question one way or another. Is there something here or is there not? Sometimes they'd catch lots of activity. Sometimes they'd catch almost none. But it was always gripping watching, at least for me, because unlike these programs where people were just telling their ghost story, you felt like you were there with them. You were watching this program like, oh my God, they could capture something truly paranormal at any second and I'm going to get to see it. I'm going to get to see an apparition or something move or something be thrown or a sound or something. And it was, for me, it was really gripping TV. And I used to watch it religiously. Like, I would not go out on the nights it was on. Even to this day, I remember it was on Living UK, I think the channel was, and it was on Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock, and I would watch it religiously. And then every so often, like at Halloween, they would do like a Halloween special where they had a live studio audience and they'd be in some place filming live, and they were even more exciting for me. Like, I literally would not move from the sofa. I really loved Most Haunted. To this day, I still think it's the best one of these sorts of programs where they go hunting for ghosts. It's still the best as far as I'm concerned, because you know, all the newer ones, the American ones, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, they have their good elements, they're entertaining, but there's always something a little bit over dramatized about them. They're overly dramatic and overly edited, whereas Most Haunted, the reactions of the people were real. So the main sort of person in it was a woman called Yvette Fielding, who she was like the main character, and she was always screaming and shouting every time something would happen paranormal, but it was relatable. You'd watch it going, yeah, I'd react like that. If something creepy was creeping up on me, or something was coming towards me, or I was in a dark basement of a castle or something, I'd be reacting like that if something actually started happening. And even though you could kind of, people look back and go, oh, it's a bit unprofessional. It's like, yeah, but it was real. It was real. That's how people react to ghosts. That's why they're frightening. That's why we're interested in them, because they're frightening and because it's otherworldly and no one really knows what this thing is. Them reactions for me, the reactions of the whole crew where they'd all get a bit frightened or something bizarre would happen and they'd all kind of run in the opposite direction. It was real. It was a real way of investigating as far as I was concerned. And over the years they caught some really interesting stuff on camera, and I still to this day think it was the best paranormal program out there. It was that, along with many other things, but definitely that program at that time in my life that set me up for this huge interest in the paranormal, which in turn sort of boosted my love of Halloween even more than I already loved it. And it's like a cyclical thing. My love of the paranormal and the ghost stories and hearing things and trying and really a real interest in going on I'd love to go on a ghost hunt at some point. I'd pan myself, I think, but I would love to go on one and just to see if anything happened, because I've always had a deep interest in it. I'm not saying that it's dead people. I'm not saying that it's, oh, what is it? I'm just saying that there are too many stories, too many experiences to be happening across the world all the time. I mean, you go anywhere in the world, every single culture, no matter how related or disconnected, has ghost stories. They have some form of a ghost story in there, wherever they are. That's too much of a coincidence for my liking. There's too many things that are happening around the world that we all relate to and we all understand. You know, when you say the word poltergeist, We know what a poltergeist is. We know it's a ghost that kind of moves things about. Beautiful. We know these things because we know it because we kind of like we make fun of it, and it's kind of a ghosts. But we know it because it's so joined up into our cultures, everybody's culture. There are some cultures around the world who relate to it less, but they still have their ghost stories. They still have their myths and their legends around this kind of stuff. And for me, I just think there's too much of a coincidence there that for all these different people all around the world to be telling these stories for centuries, and it just to be made up, it to be nothing more than human imagination. It could be, but I personally think there's more there. And it's down to programs like Most Haunted, I think, bringing them back into the forefront of people's minds and actually trying to look at it from a scientific, a spiritual element, but a scientific element too, actually trying to find answers. It's programs like that we are going to have to rely on in the future to actually find any evidence, because science is never going to do it, because they just don't think it exists. And the real believers, they just like telling a good story. What you need is that middle place, and that's the place I'm interested in. That's the bit of the paranormal I love. And like I say, for me, it relates back to Halloween massively, so it's why I love talking about it so often. Thank you for watching this random discussion video. I know it's gone on for way too long, but I'm passionate about the paranormal, and I love anything to do with it, and I thought it'd be interesting to hear why and where I stand on the subject. So if you've watched all the way through, thank you so much. Please give this video a little like and subscribe if you've watched it and enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep it spooky. Bye.